And every time I think with myself that there's no more originality in terms of creations and new content of entertainment, I always go back to animes and their long history of stories and mythologies that even though it drank a little as well from the American source, it was always able to put it in a very adult and dark context when we talk about their narratives and creations. Stories with demons, dark mythology, robots, cyberpunk were the main thing in these animes from the 80s and 90s. And this is where lies my passion for them, at the same time that in terms of action, Japanese animation was always the best in my opinion. And MD Geist is one of the greatest examples. And this is an anime from 1986. Sometimes it looks like all the greatest animes came from this decade. It tells the story of humanity having spread across many planets in many galaxies, but along with this expansion, it also spread what is most common between humans, the wars. And as any respectful anime, it starts showing this war with merciless gore scenes, heads exploding, bodies being dismembered, everything we most love, in the middle of already destroyed cities. During this war, a new race of soldiers genetically created to be actually super soldiers came up to be combatants in this conflict. The category name of these soldiers were MDs. From this comes MD Geist, who is our protagonist. But because they had a supernatural strength and their methods were very extreme, especially from MD Geist, the government decided to discharge them from their tasks, and in the case of MD Geist, they let him trapped in a satellite because of how dangerous he is. And after the satellite crashed in a planet, Geist is able to escape and starts to plan a revenge against those who let him trapped in there. And like I said, the anime is merciless in show its violence. There are many scenes of pure carnage, especially when we talk about combats between the hero Geist, or anti-hero, and the villains he cross paths. Which is an element that is very appropriate here since we are talking about a story in a post-apocalyptic world. Inspirations of movies like Mad Max or Conan are undeniable in my opinion. Mad Max because the main character is basically this lone walker who ends up finding some situations in his path, situations that force him to join some group of characters. In this case, after he defeats a leader of a gang, then he becomes their leader, and the gang members are basically Mad Max characters, especially in terms of vehicles and their clothes. And also because the category of character that MD Geist belongs to is something like the man without a name, which means that he is the kind of silent character that moves from place to place, interferes in some situation to help some group of characters. Examples of this is of course Mad Max, but also the old westerns of Clint Eastwood, like for example in the Dollar Trilogy. He's a quiet guy, he doesn't use many words, but if you mess with him, you will discover that he is lethal in the worst way. And what I most liked about this character is that similar to these other characters that I mentioned, they're not exactly good people looking for good deeds or heroic actions. They're basically looking for things that are of their own interest, and in the end they end up making some heroic thing by consequence. But here MD Geist goes a little beyond than this. He is no hero actually. During the story it becomes very clear that he is just a lethal weapon, a guy who is just looking for one thing: revenge against those who screwed him in the past, no matter who he has to use during the way to achieve this. So actually there's no sign of purity inside him. He is nothing more and nothing less than a son of the war. Outside these character details, this is an anime of 40 minutes or so, and during the story his look evolves constantly, which I loved by the way. He starts with this very rough and long hair, bearded look that really looks like Conan. This is after he escapes from the satellite that he was trapped. Then he goes to this more clean look when he puts some sunglasses and becomes like a rock star in my opinion, almost replicating the iconic look of the Terminator, even though this anime was released before the Terminator 2, so maybe Arnold got his look from him. But like I said in the title of the video, he really looks like a rock star in my opinion. These glasses and jacket is just too badass. Then we move to the last phase of his look, that is him wearing this huge armor, which helps him fight some bigger and stronger enemies like machines, something that eventually takes place in the climax. And it's a fucking cool armor. It really takes back to the old classic anime armors. Something like Shurato or Samurai Warriors, but having something more robotic to his aesthetic. Which impresses me because it has so many details that it must have been a pain in the ass to animate this armor in all the frames of the animation in the past, without mentioning the other elements on the screen like the other robots and so forth. And another element that seems to come straight from Mad Max are the vehicle chases in the desert, especially one scene that takes place in the middle of the story, the best action scene in the anime in my opinion, that you have MD Geist and the gang he joined entering in the middle of a conflict to help some officers of the army troops that are being attacked by enemies. And it is a very stylish chase, full of explosions, headshots, bodies exploding, a lot of blood, just because MD Geist wants to deceive some troop officers, presenting himself as a friend, just to infiltrate them and find his revenge that is directly linked to one of the officials in this group. It's a very long scene that has some tones that remind me of Mad Max Fury Road. Of course, this anime came way before, but it has also these elements of these very heavy vehicles, all rusty and old, in the middle of the desert, battling in a conflict that seems to have no end. And again, MD Geist is all about being a badass and a stylish dude in this scene. Anyway, I don't want to give too many spoilers if you didn't watch it yet. And by the way, if you want to watch it, this anime is full on YouTube if you look for it. But if you already watched, I'm gonna talk about a little spoiler in the end, because MD Geist is able to reach his goal, the revenge that he was after, but he is not satisfied with only that. As he says to the lady in the anime, the one that followed him during the entire story, lusting for his body and his love, he says that his revenge is just beginning, and he initiates an operation called Death Force in a computer of a base that he was attacking in the climax. And it's a very strange but cool ending that ends with the hero winning, but he's not actually a real hero. It actually looks like a villain winning, and making very clear that he wants more carnage in the future. So much so that he grabs the neck of the girl that followed him in the story, and her screams of horror once she sees the killer eyes of MD Geist makes this ending have a kind of disturbing mood. But to talk about this carnage that he will propagate even more, I'm gonna need a second video to talk about the part 2 of MD Geist. Cause yes, this anime had a sequel called MD Geist 2 Death Force, which is exactly the name of the operation that he turns on in the computer of the base. And not giving too many spoilers yet, it's an awesome sequel as well. So for not to miss this video, please subscribe to the channel if you love this content of animes, animations, horror movies, trash movies, and some other stuff that we love. Alright? See you in the next Trashing with Gus, and bye bye.